Matthew chapter number 5. Matthew 5. Well, I got a lot of ground to cover this morning. Got a lot to say. Won't be able to finish the chapter, but going to take a big bite in it. And so we're in that part of the Sermon on the Mount where Jesus is correcting some of the false teachings of the rabbis. And he highlights some of their prominent teachings and he exposes how that it is a misinterpretation of God's law. And you already know the formula by now. Ye have heard, this is what you've been taught all of your life. This is what the rabbis are teaching you. But I say unto you, this is where you're wrong. And I'm going to tell you what the law really intends. Not correcting the law, not changing the law, not adding anything to the law, but restoring the true meaning of the law. That's what Jesus is doing in this section. And we've looked at the first three statements. There are six. We've looked at the first three. Ye have heard, thou shalt not kill. I say unto you, if you're angry with your brother without a cause, you're guilty. Ye have heard, thou shalt not commit adultery. I say, if you look at a woman to lust after her in your heart, you've committed adultery, you're guilty. And then you've heard a bill of divorcement, or writing of divorcement when you put away your wife. I say unto you that if you divorce and remarry, except it be for fornication, then you're guilty. You've committed adultery. That's the first three statements. And I was thinking about this whole conversation and how it demonstrates that when a person gets saved, they start hearing some new stuff, some new things. Everything that Jesus told them was new. They've never heard it on this fashion before. And I think how that when you get saved, that it really opens you up to how wrong you are without the teachings of Christ. Now, some of you, when you got saved, you heard about things that are wrong you had no idea was wrong before you got saved. Some of you, when you got saved, you heard about some truths and some doctrines that you had never thought about. You were told about some duties of a Christian that you had never considered before. And so these Pharisees, they're hearing a new ethic. They're going to reject it because they don't want the authority of Christ in their life. And a lot of people don't want to hear what Christ has to say. But Jesus is giving these contrasts between what they teach and the true meaning of the law. And we're coming down to verse number 33, down to verse number 48. And here's the next three statements. And if you want to just look at it quickly, verse 33 and verse 34. You've heard that it hath been said by them of old time, thou shalt not forswear thyself, but shalt perform unto the Lord thine oaths. But I say unto you, swear not at all, neither by heaven, for it is God's throne. And then on it goes. And then if you look in verse number 38, ye have heard it hath been said, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. But I say unto you, that you resist not evil. Boy, some tough verses here. Then in verse 43, we'll not get to this morning. Ye have heard that it hath been said, thou shalt love thy neighbor and hate thine enemy. I say unto you, love your enemies. Bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you. Pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you. So here's three more ethics of the kingdom. This is his teaching, and I'm going to try to get through the first two as quickly as I can. So look, if you would, first of all, in verse 33 down to verse number 37, here's the ethic of keeping vows. The ethic of keeping vows. Look at it, verse 34. Verse 33, again, you've heard it hath been said by them of old time, thou shalt not forswear thyself, but shalt perform unto the Lord thine oaths. Sounds good enough. But I say unto you, swear not at all, neither by heaven, for it's God's throne, nor by the earth, for it's his footstool, neither by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. Neither shalt thou swear by thy head, because thou canst not make one hair white or black, but let your communication be yea, yea. Nay, nay. Let your yeses be yeses and your noes be noes. For whatsoever is more than these cometh of evil. Now let me break it down. Three things about this. First of all, I want you to notice the Old Testament principle. In verse number 33, Jesus brings up the subject of swearing. And what you have to understand, that swearing is not cursing. It's not profanity. That's not what it's talking about. But swearing is taking a vow. All right, I swear by my mother's grave, or if I'm lying, I hope to die. It's that kind of swearing is what it's talking about. And in verse number 33, thou shalt not forswear thyself. I didn't know what the word forswear means, so I looked it up. It means to falsely swear. It means to perjure yourself. So as you've heard, don't perjure yourself. Don't swear falsely. Don't swear to do something and not carry through. If you make a vow or you swear to do something, you are bound to do that. And swearing isn't just saying you're going to do something. It's not just a promise. Here's what you got to understand. To swear something is to call upon God or someone else as your witness to that promise. In the Old Testament, when you took an oath and you swore by someone, you were calling that person as a witness, and you were calling for their judgment upon you if you didn't keep your word. Someone or something who is more trustworthy is called to basically vouch for your words. And your accountability to them is if I'm lying, if I don't keep my vow, then may you or God judge me. That's the idea of swearing. I'll give you an example of it. Look in Genesis chapter 31. Genesis chapter 31, very important now. Genesis 31, because I led the singing and I'm already sweaty, I'm going to take my jacket off. But Genesis chapter 31, and look at verse number 43, a couple of verses here. Laban answered, said to Jacob, these daughters are my daughters, these children are my children, these cattle are my cattle, all that thou seest is mine. And what can I do this day unto these my daughters, or unto their children which they have borne? Now therefore come thou, let us make a covenant, I and thou, let it be for a witness between me and thee. And Jacob took a stone and set it up for a pillar. And Jacob said unto his brethren, gather stones. And they took stones and made an heap, and they did eat there upon the heap. And Laban called it Baghdad, and Jacob called it Galeed, however you say that word. And Laban said, this heap is a witness between me and thee this day. Therefore was the name of it called it Galeed, because they couldn't pronounce the other word. And verse 49, and Mizpah, for he said, the Lord watch between me and thee when we are absent one from another. Watch this. If thou shalt afflict my daughters, or if thou shalt take other wives beside my daughters, no man is with us. So see, God is witness betwixt me and thee. Laban said to Jacob, behold this heap, and behold this pillar, which I have cast betwixt me and thee. This heap be witness, and this pillar be witness, that I will not pass over this heap to thee, and thou shalt not pass over this heap and this pillar unto me for harm. The God of Abraham, the God of Nahor, the God of their father, judge betwixt us. And Jacob sware by the fear of his father Isaac. Here's what's happening. Jacob has left Laban after 14 years and 2 wives, and he's going home, and those 14 years have basically been filled with Jacob and Laban lying to each other. And so they don't trust each other. And so Laban pursues Jacob, and they make a covenant. And the covenant is basically to let's start respecting each other and each other's property. And Laban says, I won't steal from you no more, and you don't steal from me each other. And since we know we're both liars, let's call God as our witness and judge to this thing. And Laban basically says, if I violate my end of the covenant, then may God judge me. And Jacob says, if I violate my end of the covenant, then may God judge me. And the stones are just a representation. But they both declare, this is a covenant, this is a vow that I make to you, and I make to God, and God judge me if I don't keep my end of the covenant. By the way, not an uncommon thing in our society. When you go to court, you put your hand on the Bible, you raise your hand, and you say, I solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. At a marriage altar, you take vows, and usually the preacher will say something like this, before God and these witnesses. That's a vow. That's a vow. Look at Hebrews chapter 6. Hebrews chapter 6. Just giving you a little bit of background, and boy, it's going to get real personal here in just a minute. Hebrews chapter number 6. Probably the best example of how an oath is understood in the Bible. Hebrews 6 verse 16, for men verily swear by the greater, and an oath for confirmation is to them an end of all strife. So when a man wants to make an oath and he wants to convince you of his truthfulness, he swears by something greater than himself. So 2 fellows have a dispute and they don't trust each other. And so one promises to do something to settle the dispute, and to show that he really means business, he swears that he's telling the truth by calling God as his witness. That's what it's talking about. By the way, very interesting, since we're here, verse 17. Wherefore God, willing more abundantly to show unto the heirs of promise the immutability of his counsel, confirmed it by an oath. God himself took an oath. Very interesting. God wanted you to know how true and immutable his word is, so he took an oath, not because he's untrustworthy, but to emphasize the very surety of his word. He accommodates himself to mankind. I love that. Look at Numbers chapter 30. Numbers chapter 30. Stay with me. Stay with me. It's going to get very convicting in a minute. Numbers 30, verse 2. If a man vow a vow unto the Lord, or swear an oath to bind his soul with a bond, he shall not break his word. He shall do according to all that proceedeth out of his mouth. See, here's what the Bible knows. The Bible knows that men are liars. Right? Men are liars, and there's a lot of distrust. And we have these systems to persuade others that we're not lying. And really, that's just a statement of the fact of the dishonesty that is so prevalent in humanity. The very fact that you have to take an oath on a witness stand and under the threat of perjury is a statement that men are liars. By the way, look at Matthew chapter 26. Matthew chapter 26. Let me show you a man who made such an oath and called God as his witness. Classic example. Look at Matthew 26 and look at verse 69. Matthew 26, 69. Now Peter sat without in the palace, and a damsel came unto him, saying, Thou also wast with Jesus of Galilee. But he denied them before all, saying, I know not what thou sayest. Bad enough. But watch this. When he was gone out into the porch, another maid saw him and said unto them that were there, This fellow was also with Jesus of Nazareth. Now watch this. And again he denied with an oath, I do not know the man. The second time, it's not enough just to say, hey, I don't know him. No, the second time he swore, I don't know him. He took an oath. I promise you, it's almost saying, listen, I swear to you as God as my witness, I don't know the man. Huh? He has just called God as his witness that he's telling the truth when he knew he was lying, and what he's lying about is knowing who Jesus was. No wonder the last statement of verse 75 is he went out and wept bitterly. See what he's just done? So here's the principle. Taking an oath, swearing by someone, is to indicate the seriousness of your promise and your trustworthiness. You call God or someone else to be a witness that what you said is true, so you can't weasel out of it. And your testimony, their testimony, gives weight to that promise, and it holds you accountable to keep your word. That's the Old Testament principle of oaths. Come back to Matthew chapter 5. Here's the Pharisaic perversion. Look at it, verse 34. But I say unto you, swear not at all. Now let me take a time out, just real quick right here. There's a lot of Christians that take that statement right there, swear not at all, to say that a Christian should not swear. Now I'm not talking about cursing. I'm not talking about profanity. I'm not talking about that. But should not swear. Should never say, I swear. And some Christians, by the way, don't believe that a Christian should take an oath. Okay. For example, in a court of law. When the court recorder says, do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? They would say, I promise. I promise. Some would even go so far as to say that it would even pertain to a marriage vow. You should. I grew up with a disdain for saying, I swear. I swear. I don't know, probably very, very few times I have said, because it just didn't sound very Christian to me. So we grew up. Did anybody grow up saying, you couldn't use those words, I swear? All right, 2 or 3 of us were Christians growing up. All right, good. I don't believe it's wrong for a Christian to take an oath in a court of law, or certainly at a marriage altar. The word swear is used a lot in the Bible, and it's always not a bad connotation. It's a strong word for a very adamant promise. So I don't believe Jesus is coming up with something new. All right? That's not what he's doing. But what Jesus is getting at is how the principle of oaths was being perverted, watch this, to literally accommodate dishonesty. You see, these Jews had really all of these loopholes, and one of them was that you are bound only as great as the thing that you bind yourself. For example, if you swear by the name of God, you can't go any higher than that, right? So if you swear by the name of God, you are swearing, you're taking an oath by the very highest thing, you are not getting out of that. So when you swear by something and you don't want to be totally accountable, then you swear by something that is lesser than God. So here's what the Jews would do. They knew they were liars. They knew that they couldn't be trusted. They wanted to swear and make this promise, but they knew that they may not keep it. So they didn't swear by God, because if they're found guilty of breaking that vow, then that's serious business. So they swore by everything except God. So they would swear by the temple, or by Jerusalem, or by your mother-in-law, or whatever, but not by God. So verse 33. Here's what they said. Thou shalt not forswear thyself, watch this, but shalt perform unto the Lord your oaths. That's their loophole right there. If you swore by the Lord, then you have to keep your oath. But if you swore by anything else, it's not quite as serious, and you could possibly get out of it. If it's by heaven, by temple, by the Jerusalem, by whatever it might be, the hairs of your head, but not by the name of the Lord. So you have Old Testament principle, you have Pharisaic perversion. Here's the Lord's perspective. Look at verse 34. He says, swear not at all. Swear not at all. Neither by heaven, it's God's throne, nor by the earth, it's his footstool, neither by Jerusalem, it's the city of the great king. Don't swear by heaven, because heaven belongs to God. Swearing by heaven is the same as swearing by God. That's what he says. Don't swear by the earth, because the earth belongs to God. It's his footstool. Don't swear by Jerusalem, because the Old Testament makes it plain that Jerusalem is the city of the great king. Here's what Jesus is doing. You can't have these little loopholes where you can say something and no. Look at Matthew chapter 23. You can't avoid God. You can't lie over here and speak the truth over here. Look how he tears it apart in Matthew 23. Stay with me. Matthew 23, look at verse 16. Woe unto you, ye blind guides, which say, whosoever shall swear by the temple, it's nothing. But whosoever shall swear by the gold of the temple, he's a debtor. You fools and blinds, whether is greater the gold or the temple that sanctifieth the gold. And whosoever shall swear by the altar, it's nothing, but whosoever sweareth by the gift that is upon it, he is guilty. Ye fools and blind, whether is greater the gift or the altar that sanctifieth the gift. Whosoever therefore shall swear by the altar, sweareth by it, and by all things thereon. Whosoever shall swear by the temple, sweareth by him that dwelleth therein. He that shall swear by heaven sweareth by the throne of God, and by him that sitteth thereon. So here's what Jesus is saying. You can't fit all of these little silly categories that you fit your lies in. You've come up with all these little schemes to get away from accountability. But here's what Jesus said. Your word matters. That's what he says. You can't tell the lie over here and speak truth over here, and you can't lie in business and tell the truth in church, and you can't have a secular life and have a sacred life. Anytime that you make a vow, anytime that you make a promise, God hears that. It's to God. It's God. So verse 37, back to Matthew 5, verse 37. Let your communication be yea, yea, nay, nay. Here's what he says. Tell the truth. Just be absolutely truthful. No such thing as little white lies. They're all big black lies. And be so truthful, be so truthful. He says, whatsoever is more than these cometh of evil. Be so truthful that you don't have to add a vow to every word that you say. Amen. Yes and no ought to be enough. When you say yes, it ought to mean yes. When you say no, it ought to mean no. The day when you could go to the bank and get a loan just with your signature is far gone. Right? We've blown past that. But you ought to have the testimony of truthfulness that your word and a handshake is enough. The ethic of keeping your vow. Notice this second ethic right here, and this one's going to get tough. But look at verse 38. Here's the ethic of no retaliation. You've heard it hath been said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Now, get ready to read some tough verses. Look at verse 39. I say unto you, that you resist not evil. Here's a tough one right here. Whosoever shall smite thee on thy right cheek, turn to him the other also. If any man will sue thee at the law and take away thy coat, let him have thy cloak also. That's a blessing, isn't it? Whosoever shall compel thee to go a mile, go with him twain. Give to him that asketh thee, and from him that would borrow of thee, turn not thou away. Those are some tough verses, aren't they? Easy to read them wrong. The Pharisees did that. Well, what does Jesus mean when he says in verse number 38 or verse 39 that you resist not evil? And the reason why that these verses sound so anti-cultural is because it is. You know what we demand in this society is we demand our rights. I have my rights. Everybody has their... America is obsessed with rights. That's how the politician stays in power, is he divides people among all of these classes, and everybody has a right to be catered to. So we have civil rights, and we have women's rights, and we have children's rights, and we have gay rights, and we have transgender rights, and we have union rights. Everybody has a right. You have a right to health insurance. You have a right to paid family leave. You have a right to paid vacation. You have a right and just creating all of these rights. And we live in an angry, spiteful, vengeful, retaliatory world, and it's almost as if we've all become vulgarians. I was flying home Friday. I was flying home and sat down on the plane from Charlotte to Pensacola, and sat down next to a guy, a big black guy, and tried to strike up a conversation. He didn't want to talk, and I needed to be honest with you, and so that was fine. And he had his iPod music, and he had his headphones on. And that's the thing nowadays, is you go in and you put your headphones on, and that tells everybody, leave me alone. And so he had his headphones, he had his music, and he had it there, and he was reading an article on his phone, and it was stories of police abuse. That's what it was about. Okay? And so he had his iPod listening, and I just looked over because I'm nosy, and looked at the music on his, and it was gangster rap, and it was blank the police, and just cuss word in every title, and it was all about. So here's a guy who is Black Lives Matter, and he believes that all police are pigs, and so he carries a chip on his shoulder because the news media has brainwashed him. Is what it's done. Okay, and he's angry. He's vengeful. He's spiteful, and it's a get even spirit that prevails in our world. And that same spirit prevailed in Jesus' day. They believed in eye for eye, tooth for tooth, get even. Strike back, hold a grudge. Jesus turns it on his head. That's what he does. Jesus says, no, my ethics are to forgive, to forfeit your rights, to not seek revenge, to not be spiteful, to not hold a grudge. That's what these verses are about. Look at it quickly. Notice the Old Testament principle, verse 38. Ye have heard it hath been said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Now look right here. That is an exact quote from the Old Testament. In fact, it is an exact quote from 3 places in the Old Testament. There is nothing wrong with that statement. In fact, quickly, Exodus chapter 21. Are you still with me? Say amen. Exodus chapter 21. I'm going to show you how to interpret that passage. Context means everything. Look in Exodus chapter 21. Exodus 21, we're looking at verse 22. Exodus 21, 22. If men strive and hurt a woman with child, so that her fruit or her child depart from her, and yet no mischief follow. He shall be surely punished according as the woman's husband will lay upon him. He shall pay as the judges determine. And if any mischief follow, then thou shalt give life for life. Here it is. Eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burning for burning, wound for wound, stripe for stripe. If a man smite the eye of his servant or the eye of his maid that it perish, he shall let him go free for his eye's sake. If he smite out his manservant's tooth or his maidservant's tooth, he shall let him go free for his tooth's sake. If an ox gore a man or a woman that they die, then the ox shall surely be stoned, and his flesh shall not be eaten, but the owner of the ox shall be quit. Now watch this. Exodus 21 begins a section of the law that's called civil law. The law of Israel is divided into three areas. There is ceremonial law. That is law that deals with worship. That's tabernacle, sacrifices, offerings, high priestly, ceremonial law. There is moral law, 10 commandments. There is civil law. Civil law has to do with government, justice, punishment of crime, property rights, civil law. So what you have in Exodus chapter 21 is you have civil law. This is law of the magistrates and the judges, and it's critical. It's critical to understand that Moses is giving a law for a civil government to administer. It is not a statement of personal vengeance. This is a matter for proper authorities to exercise, not personal vengeance. So here's what happens. A woman is carrying a child. She's pregnant. And she's harmed in some way. She may or may not lose the baby. And she has a right to seek damages. But the husband doesn't go get a club and beat the other guy over the head. Well, there's a court for that. You take it to the judge, and the judge decides. And the principle that the judge operates by, here it is, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. Nothing less, nothing more. Not merciful, not extravagant. If a man has a servant, and he gets angry, he hauls off, and he knocks the servant down and knocks his tooth out. Or knocks him down and pokes his eye out. That servant has the right to take that master to court, though he's a servant, and he can be set free. You know what that does? That protects the weaker from the younger. Even the weak, even the servants have a recourse for judgment. But listen, the servant doesn't plot and wait till he catches the master's back turn and haul off and hit him with a hoe handle. No. It's a matter for judges and civil magistrates. Do you see that? Look in Leviticus chapter 24. Leviticus 24. If you don't see this, you're not going to understand Matthew 5. Leviticus 24 and verse number 17. Here's the second time it shows up. He that killeth any man shall surely be put to death. He that killeth a beast shall make it good, beast for beast. If a man cause a blemish in his neighbor, as he hath done, so shall be done to him. Breach for breach, here it is, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. As he hath caused a blemish in a man, so shall it be done to him again. Again, the standard of justice is the same. You kill a neighbor's beast or an ox, and you have to pay him restitution, value equal to his ox. But the neighbor doesn't come over and steal an ox. No. There's a way of justice. Look at Deuteronomy chapter 19. Here's the third time. Deuteronomy chapter 19. Deuteronomy 19, verse 16. Boy, this right here would solve a lot of frivolous lawsuits. If a false witness rise up against any man to testify against him that which is wrong, then both the men, between whom the controversy is, shall stand before the Lord, before the priests and the judges which shall be in those days. The judges shall make diligent inquisition, and behold, if the witness be a false witness, and hath testified falsely against his brother, then shall ye do unto him as he hath thought to have done unto his brother. So shalt thou put the evil away from among you. And those which remain shall hear and fear, and shall henceforth commit no more any such evil among you. And thine eye shall not pity, his life shall go for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. If a man perjures himself in a court of law, trying to falsely accuse another man, then whatever punishment he wants that other man to get, he gets it. And again, it's a court of law. It's a civil authority. It's a government authority that exercises judgment. You can't go catch the guy in bed one night and burn his barn down. No, that's not the way you do it. There is a proper way. Here it is. There's a proper way to protect yourself and to seek damages. So here it is. Here's the principle. It's found 3 times, and the point every time is you don't take the law into your own hands. You know, there's a group of people running around our country right now that say, let's get rid of all the police. All the police are bad. They're all racist and they're all killing. So do you really want to live in a land like that? Do you really want to live in a system of anarchy? What eye for eye says is that the punishment should fit the crime. If you steal one chicken from me, that doesn't give me a right to go tear your barn down. It's eye for eye. And it doesn't necessarily mean that if your eye is put out, that you had to go and maim the other person, but there might be monetary restitution, but there has to be recompense for that damage. That's the Old Testament principle. There was a novelist, a Russian novelist, Leo Tolstoy. Some of you know who I'm talking about. He was a pacifist, is what he was. He was a Christian anarchist. And he believed that we ought to have no police and no military and no army. That would be utopia. No, that's not utopia. That's anarchy is what that is. Old Testament principle. Quickly, go back to Matthew 5. Here's the Pharisaic perversion. Come back to it. You're going to find out that the Pharisees twisted these things completely around. And even now, some people take the words of Jesus to mean the exact opposite. And they take the statement in verse 39, that you resist not evil. I say to you that you resist not evil. So a lot of people take that verse to say, well, we should be pacifists. Or conscientious objectors to war. Or preach against capital punishment. Huh? That's not what the verse says. Here's how the Pharisees took eye for eye and tooth for tooth. They flipped it on its head. They took it out of the courts and they made it a personal matter. The Old Testament used it as a protection against retaliation. The Pharisees used it as a mandate for retaliation. Can you imagine a society where retaliation was our standard of justice? So if your wife does something to make you mad, then you're going to go do something to make them mad. Or if little brother tears sister's toy up, then you're going to let sister go tear little brother's toy up to get back. Is that how you want to teach them to live? When your neighbor breaks one of your tools, you're going to go over and say, all right, which one of your tools do you want me to break? You got a world of vengeance and revenge and vengeance. And that's the principle that the Pharisees preach. If you violate my rights, then I'm going to personally take matters into my own hands. I'm going to violate one of your rights. Eye for eye, tooth for tooth. Completely flipped it around. Old Testament principle, Pharisaic perversion. Watch the Lord's perspective. Watch how he said it. He says in verse 38, you've heard it hath been said, eye for eye and a tooth for tooth. Again, verse 39. I say unto you that you resist not evil. He's not calling us to be doormats. He's not counseling out self-defense. Jesus himself resisted evil when he drove the money changers out of the temple, did he not? So this is not a verse about pacifism. But in the context, what Jesus is saying is don't start a feud and don't go off on a personal vengeance tour. And if a person wrongs you, it's not yours to take justice into your own hands. Romans 12 and verse 17, here's a good verse for you. Recompense to no man evil for evil. So if somebody scratches your car, you don't go scratch their car. If someone cuts you off in traffic, you don't go cut them off in traffic. If someone knocks your mailbox down, you don't go knock their mailbox down. If somebody shoots your dog, you don't go shoot their dog. No. Paul said, dearly beloved, avenge not yourselves, but rather give place unto wrath. For it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, saith the Lord. Vengeance belongs to him. That's what he's saying. Now Jesus quickly picks out 4 scenarios. Here are 4 rights, 4 scenarios. Let me give them to you. First of all, there's dignity violated. Look, if you would, in verse 39. I say unto you that you resist not me evil. Watch this. Whosoever shall smite thee on thy right cheek, turn to him the other also. Kind of tough, ain't it? Whosoever shall smite thee on thy right cheek, turn to him the other also. Now, that doesn't mean that if somebody starts hitting you, you just stand there and take the beating. If a guy walks up to you and just slaps the stew out of you, just punches you in the nose, I don't believe Jesus is saying, well, God bless you, sir. Let me turn my other cheek so thou mayest smackest that too. I don't think that's what he's saying. That goes against every self-defense verse in the Bible. If a guy punches you in the nose, that doesn't mean that you invite him to poke you in the eye. So what's he saying? To the Jew, the most demeaning, insulting thing was to slap someone in the face. A slap is not so much to hurt, but to be insulting. When you put up your fist, it is a fight man to man. When you slap someone, it is a contemptuous thing. It is a thing of contempt. It is demeaning. It is insulting. It is disrespectful. Here's the principle. When you are insulted, when you are called names, when you are shown no respect, do not retaliate. Don't get even. Don't insult them back. Just take it and let them do it again, and don't post a response on Facebook. Amen. Amen. When someone treats you less than you deserve, when someone insults your dignity, when someone calls your name, when someone cusses you out, don't retaliate. When your dignity is violated. Look at verse 40. When your security is violated. Verse 40, if any man will sue thee at the law and take away thy coat, let him have thy cloak also. Now, I have to make an assumption here. The assumption is that you're being sued and the person suing you has a right to sue you. You've done something to give them a right to take you to court, and you are being sued for something. It doesn't mean that if someone wants to take advantage of you, that you invite him to take more advantage of it. That's what I'm saying. But if someone sues you for, if they have a right to sue you, there is justification for him to take you to court. Here's what the Bible says. If he sues you for your coat, then give him your cloak also. Now, two articles of clothing mention coat and cloak, and there's a lot of commentators making a big deal about one's outer garment, one's inner garment. Over in the Old Testament, if a man borrowed your coat, he had to give it back by nightfall. And the reason why is because that coat was kind of like a blanket. You wrapped yourself up in it at night. You used it to sleep with. And there was some security in that. So I'm not worried about the distinction, but I'm trying to find the principle. Here it is. Jesus says that when someone has a right to receive damages from you, don't begrudge that. Don't try to retaliate and get it back. In fact, if you want to be a good testimony, give him more than he asked for. He won't be able to handle that, will he? Now again, that's not frivolous lawsuit. Somebody sues you to get your house and you say, oh, take my car too. No, this is somebody, the assumption is he has a right. He has a right to damages. He's taking you to court. Don't begrudge that. Offer him more. Oh, boy, you're enjoying this so much. Here's the third one, liberty violated. Look at verse 41. I told you at the beginning, boy, the teachings of Jesus are really different, aren't they? Boy, they're really different. Verse 41. Whosoever shall compel thee to go a mile, go with him twain. I was reading some history on this. I found it very interesting. The Romans had a law. They really stole it from the Persians. The Persians said that a soldier could conscript a citizen to carry his pack and his weapons. And they say that where it really started, the Persians had a very elaborate system of mail delivery. They had postal stations set up that were about a day's journey by horseback from each other. And so it's kind of like a Pony Express that they would deliver the mail to this outpost, and then they would rest the night, and then the next day get fresh horses and go to the next outpost. And they had this all over the Persian kingdom. And here's what the law said, that a courier carrying the mail by horseback to a station, it had to get there. So if he is injured or he is sick, he is unable to get there, then he can compel a citizen to carry this mail to that state. The mail's got to get there. So if his horse breaks his leg or he's injured and he physically cannot do it, then by law he can compel, kind of like citizen's arrest, he can compel a citizen to do that for. If I can't go, then I can make you go in my place. The Romans picked that up and they adopted this little law as well. And Romans said that the soldier had a right to compel a citizen to carry a load for him. Do you remember when Jesus was carrying the cross up Golgotha? He was beaten and he was weak. The Bible says they compelled Simon the Cyrene to carry the cross. Jesus so physically weak that they can just pick somebody out from the crowd and say, carry this. That was the idea. The Romans had one little law though. Here's what they said. The soldier can compel you to go, but only for a mile. Only a mile. Now I want you to think about this. To a Jew who hated Roman law, hated Roman bondage. And here comes a soldier down. He's got his backpack, he's got his shield, he's got his sword, he's got his weapons. And he pulls you off to the side and says, I'm weary from my journey and I want you to carry my material, my weapons. I want you to carry this for me a little bit. And the law says you're compelled to carry it, but for a mile. And I bet you that Jew knew exactly how far a mile was. And when he got to that mile, he set it down and said, I've fulfilled the law. I don't have to do no more. Huh? Whosoever shall compel thee to go a mile, go with him twain. You get to the end of that mile, you say, sir, I'm really not that busy today. I'm feeling fresh. If you don't mind, I just carried it another mile. Be a second mile Christian to do more than is what is expected of you. Here's the last one. You'll love this one. Get ready to shout. Verse 42, property violated. Give to him that asketh thee, and for him that will borrow of thee, turn not thou away. Now here's the assumption again. The assumption is that the guy is asking to borrow something and he has a real need. This is not just a bum on the street, all right, asking for a handout because he won't go to work. No, that's not what it is. There's a real need here. You have the ability to meet the need. So here's what Jesus says. Don't be selfish. Don't be possessive. Don't begrudge helping someone. I'll give you the law, Deuteronomy 15 and verse 7. If there be among you a poor man of one of thy brethren within any of thy gates in thy land which the Lord thy God giveth thee, thou shalt not harden thine heart, nor shut thine hand from thy poor brother, but thou shalt open thine hand wide unto him. Thou shalt surely lend him sufficient for his need in that which he wanted. Now listen to me. Wake up right here. I'm almost done. I'm almost done. We're taking a law. We're taking an Old Testament principle. The Pharisee twisted it all up. Jesus said, no, this is how you're really supposed to live. So a neighbor asked to borrow your car. And you hate to loan your car because it's new. Just got it waxed. He's got 3 kids that are messy. You know they're going to smear peanut butter on the seats. He's not going to fill it up with gas. He's not going to wash it. Here's what Jesus says. You go get that car washed up. You shine the wheels. You fill it up with gas. You change the oil. You make sure the air conditioner's working. You turn your keys over to that neighbor and say, here you are, sir. Just let him have it. That's what he says. He says, give to him that asketh thee, and from him that would borrow of thee, turn not thou away. Boy, a lot of conviction in those verses. Jesus is not prohibiting judgment. He's not denying self-defense and protection. Here's what he's saying. You ought to be forgiving. You ought to be loving. You ought to be giving. There's a higher law to live by than the law of revenge and retaliation and personal vengeance and selfishness. And quit making so many demands on your rights and look for ways to die to self. By the way, the only way that you can live to that standard is to die to self. The only way you can get through life with no spite in your heart and never bearing a grudge and never being bitter at your enemy and not wishing him harm is to die to yourself. self. Some of you this morning, you're so defensive and you're so protective. And you can't accept rebuke because you naturally bow up at it. And you get angry if you perceive that somebody's trying to correct you. And if somebody insults you, you go to Facebook and make a fool out of yourself. And you're so full of spite and anger and bravado and vengeance. Give me just a minute. What does it mean to die to self? Listen to this. When your good is evil spoken of, when your wishes are crossed, your advice disregarded, your opinions ridiculed, and you refuse to let anger rise in your heart or even defend yourself, but take it all in patient, loving silence, that's dying to self. When you are content with any circumstance, any food, any offering, any clothing, any climate, any society, any solicitude, any interruption by the will of God, that's dying to self. When you never care to refer to yourself in conversation, or record your own good works, or itch after any commendation from others, where you can truly love to be unknown, that is dying to self. When you can see your brother prosper, have his needs met, and can honestly rejoice with him in spirit, and feel no envy nor question God, while your own needs are far greater and your circumstances more desperate, that is dying to self. When you can receive correction and reproof from one of less stature than yourself, and can humbly submit inwardly as well as outwardly, finding no rebellion or resentment rising up within your heart, that is dying to self. So are you dead yet? Do you see that Jesus is trying to get us to live differently? Not a doormat, not a pacifist, but dead to self. A heart full of grace and forgiveness, and empty of all vengeance. Someone asked George Mueller what was the secret to success. Piano player, come. He said, there was a day when I died, utterly died to George Mueller. His opinions, preferences, his tastes, his wills. I died to the world, his approval or censure. I died to the approval or blame even of my brethren and friends, and since then I've studied only to show myself approved unto God. It was the day that I died. It is the spirit of Abraham who rushed to rescue Lot, who had cheated him. It is the spirit of Joseph who forgave his brethren who had sold him into slavery. It is the spirit of David who spares the life of Saul while Saul is trying to take his life. It's the spirit of Stephen who prays for the forgiveness of his enemies even while they stone him. It is the spirit of Jesus who prayed, Father, forgive them, even as they nailed him to the cross. We dig into the Word, and the Word digs into us. So does this passage speak to you? Does this reveal a need in your life? And would you respond this morning by saying, Lord, Lord, help me to live by the Spirit of Christ. I want to be this kind of Christian, and I must die to self. I'll tell you, you'll have a better testimony if you do. I tell you that you'll have a better spirit if you do. I tell you that you'll have better relationships if you do. I'll tell you that you'll have more peace, you'll have more joy, you'll have deeper relationships, and the world will see Jesus in you. Would you bow your heads with me this morning? Boy, you've listened well. I've been long, I know. Have you ever died to self? Died to self? Does this passage speak to you this morning? Heads bowed, eyes closed. Heads bowed, eyes closed. Brother Ken, I want you to come over, get a microphone. I want you to sing for us, if you would. And you can pick the song, but you're going to sing the invitation hymn for me in just a minute, just as I am, whatever you want to do. Let's stand together to our feet all over the place. Heavenly Father, add your blessing to the Word of God this morning. Covered a lot of ground, had to go fast. But I pray, Lord, that I've covered exactly what needs to be covered for us to have an understanding of what our Lord Jesus is teaching in this passage. To die to self, not vengeful, not spiteful, not angry, not bitter, not retaliatory, not vulgarians, but the spirit of forgiveness and grace, and to showing as much grace to others as I wish that they would show to us. And so I pray you'd help us this morning. Heads bowed, eyes closed. Heads bowed, eyes closed. Folks are praying. Come to the altar if you need to. How many of you say, preacher, I know beyond a shadow of a doubt. I've not preached the gospel, but how many of you know, I know beyond a shadow of a doubt, I'm saved. I'm saved. If I died today, I know heaven's my home. How many know? Slip your hand up all over the building. I No, oh, what a wonderful thing to know. Thank you. Put your hands down. I've not preached the gospel this morning. It's not a salvation message. But perhaps you've heard it 100 times before. And I wonder if there's somebody here who said, Preacher, the Holy Spirit has already been dealing with my heart, not just in this service, but time and time again, the Holy Spirit's been dealing with my heart. I know I'm not saved. If I die today, I don't believe heaven's my home. Would you pray for me? Anybody like that? Would you slip your hand up? Preacher, pray for me. Pray for me. Thank you, sir. I see your hand. Thank you. Thank you so much. Preacher, pray for me. Don't know that I'm saved. Don't know that I'm saved. So that one person raised your hand. The decision to say yes or no, it's up to you. The Holy Spirit invites you this morning. He wants you to be saved. The Father wants you to be saved. Jesus wants you to be saved. We're going to sing. We're going to sing. When we do, why don't you step out? Why don't you step out? I'll meet you. Have somebody meet you with the Bible right there. And this morning, why don't you get it settled? Why don't you get it settled this morning? Brother Ken, sing for us, would you? These are praying. These are praying at the altar. You come right now while he sings. Would you come?